Welcome to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. No alien male dared to approach her enormous body, except for one human. Twin suns pressed their heat down on the city of Karath, the crystal towers glittering so brightly that even the birds wore squints. Down among the narrow streets, where bridges were delicate as spiderwebs and market stalls were built for beings who could fit comfortably through doorways, there moved a figure who did not fit anywhere at all. Lyria ducked her head as she turned a corner, long ears brushing against a cluster of glowing lanterns that immediately popped like overripe fruit. The vendor gasped, clutching at the string of ruined lights as if they were priceless heirlooms. She tried to apologize, but her voice, deep and resonant, rolled through the street like distant thunder. The shoppers scattered, whispering her name like it was bad luck to say it aloud. She sighed, crouching to retrieve a fallen lantern, but her fingers, each larger than the stall itself, only succeeded in crushing it further. The vendor flinched, muttered something about curses, and bolted. Lyria stayed crouched, staring at the glowing shards. "Perfect," she muttered. "Another day, another piece of furniture I can't sit on, another citizen convinced I'll eat him for lunch." Straightening, she tried to continue down the avenue, though every step made the ground tremble. The crystalline pavement was beautiful but treacherously fragile, and she could already hear the faint spiderweb cracking beneath her heels. She quickened her pace, hoping to make it to the outskirts before anyone lodged an official complaint. There was nothing worse than an official complaint on Ilthuris. They came inscribed on shimmering silver tablets that weighed less than air and yet somehow crushed the spirit. Children peeked from windows, eyes wide. Their mothers yanked them back before they could be spotted staring. A group of alien men in embroidered cloaks scuttled into a temple doorway as she passed. She caught their hissed words: omen disaster, curse starbirth. The usual repertoire. By now it was practically her theme song. She reached the bread market, where she tried to purchase a loaf. The baker, a twitchy-eyed man with 4 delicate arms, trembled as she reached into the stall. The coins she dropped were so massive in her hands that one slipped, clattering onto the counter with the force of a small meteor. The counter collapsed, bread tumbled into the dust, and the baker wailed as if the universe itself had ended. Lyria closed her eyes, inhaled, exhaled, and whispered, "Sorry." The whisper rattled nearby windows. She grabbed the least dusty loaf and left double payment, ignoring the bakers sobbing about bad omens. As she turned away, the crowd parted like oil from water, always parting, always leaving her in a clear bubble of absence. When she reached the city edge, she sank onto a stone ridge overlooking the marshlands, legs folding beneath her like great pillars. She tore the bread in half, nibbling with careful precision. Even so, half the loaf vanished in a single bite. She chewed slowly, her ears flicking back in irritation. Her life was careful, cautious, constantly reduced to apologizing for her size. She sometimes wondered if she'd been born simply to remind the city what fear looked like. The suns dipped lower, staining the marshes gold. She was about to rise, return to her lonely home, when the air split with a shriek. A streak of fire tore across the sky, flaming debris scattering like dying stars. Lyria shielded her eyes with one arm as the object slammed into the marsh with a splash and a hiss that rattled the crystal towers. Curiosity and instinct shoved her to her feet. She picked her way across the brittle ground, each stride devouring distance until she stood before the smoking wreck. Metal hull, cracked open like a fruit pod, wires trailing into the water. From within came a groan. She crouched low, peering in. Something moved, small, awkward, 2-legged. A figure clambered from the wreckage, coughing. He brushed at his suit, patting out small fires on his sleeve, and then looked up. The first thing Eric saw was a silhouette blotting out the twin suns, a towering body with long ears catching the light like blades. He blinked, swayed on his feet, and muttered, "Well, that explains why nobody told me to bring a step stool." Lyria froze. In all her life, no man had ever looked at her without recoiling, without running. Yet this stranger simply squinted, brushed soot from his cheek, and added, "Do you charge by the floor or by the mile?" For a long moment, she could only stare. Then, unexpectedly, impossibly, a sound broke from her chest, a laugh. Deep booming, uncontrolled. The marsh rippled, birds exploded from the reeds, and somewhere in the city a glass dome cracked. She clapped her hands over her mouth, horrified. But the human only grinned. Good to know I'm funny on alien worlds, too. Back on Earth, people just roll their eyes. He extended a soot-smeared hand, though it barely reached her knee. Name's Eric. Pilot, sort of. Engineer, mostly. Professional bad luck magnet. She hesitated, staring at the hand. It was absurdly small, ridiculously fragile. Yet she lowered one massive finger, the tip larger than his palm, and let him touch it. His grin widened, and for the first time in her memory, the bubble of absence around Lariah cracked. Eric stumbled over a jutting piece of twisted hull, nearly planting his face in the mud. He straightened quickly, brushing muck off his suit, as if that made it less obvious. Lariah watched with a tilt of her head, ears angling forward in quiet fascination. "So," Eric said, squinting at her as though the suns behind her made her even taller, "are you going to squash me for trespassing, or should I start working on my apology speech?" Lariah blinked. "Why would I squash you?" He pointed up at her, wagging a finger. "Because you look like someone who could flatten a small moon if she sneezed wrong." Her lips twitched despite herself. "I do not sneeze wrong." "Well, that's a relief," he said. "Otherwise I'd be orbiting in about 3 seconds." The smoke of the wreck curled around them. Behind, the marsh bubbled where bits of his ship had sunk. Lariah lowered herself carefully, folding her legs so she wouldn't crush the reeds beneath her. She leaned forward, studying him the way one might study a creature both fragile and foolish. "You are not afraid," she said. "Afraid? Oh no, terrified," Eric replied cheerfully. "But if I've learned anything, it's that panicking only makes people laugh at you more. And I'd hate for my epitaph to be, 'Died screaming while running in circles.'" Her laugh shook the marsh again, though she clamped her hand over her mouth to muffle it. He grinned as though he'd won a prize. "I should take you to the city," she said finally, though doubt tugged at her. "They will not welcome you warmly." "Not welcome me warmly?" He glanced at the distant crystal towers. "What's that mean? No parade? No free snacks? No little banners saying, 'Welcome squishy human'?" "They will whisper. They will fear. They will hide." Eric shrugged, adjusting the strap on his scorched pack. "Sounds like my high school reunion. Lead the way." The journey back to the city was awkward. Every stride she took covered 30 of his, forcing him to jog, pant, and occasionally trip into the marsh. After the 4th fall, Lariah scooped him up between 2 fingers and set him gently on her shoulder. "Wow," he muttered, gripping the fabric of her tunic. "This is either the best Uber ride of my life or the weirdest." "You speak strangely," she said. "I get that a lot." When they reached the edge of Kirath, the effect was immediate. Citizens froze. Markets went silent. Then, as one, the crowd drew back. The crystal streets cleared until only Lariah and the tiny human on her shoulder remained. Eric waved with exaggerated cheer. "Hi, neighbors. Don't mind us, just your friendly neighborhood giant and her sidekick, muddy human number 1. No one laughed. A priest scuttled backward, clutching a pendant, muttering words about curses. A pair of guards whispered urgently before vanishing into the council tower. Mothers pulled children inside, shutters snapping shut. Eric leaned close to Lariah's ear. "Okay, so, either I forgot to wear deodorant, or I'm not exactly a fan favorite here." "They do not trust me," she said quietly. "They never have. You should not have come." "Well, in my defense, I didn't exactly plan to crash land here." He tapped her ear lightly with a soot-smeared finger. "But if they're scared of you, then maybe it's time they got used to someone scarier, like me, once I haven't had coffee for 3 days." She tried to hold back the laugh, but it burst out anyway, rattling windows. Eric raised both arms like he'd scored a goal. "Yes, I'll take that as a win." The guards returned, flanked by officials in robes. One stepped forward, voice sharp as glass. "Remove the off-worlder. He is contaminated. He carries doom." "Excuse me." Eric called down from her shoulder. "Contaminated? I just had a tetanus shot last year." The official ignored him, turning to Lariah. "And you dare bring this creature into the heart of the city? Your curse is enough without adding his chaos." For a long moment, Lariah said nothing. Eric could feel the tension in her posture, the way her muscles stiffened beneath him. He leaned forward, whispering, "Want me to say something stupid?" "Yes," she murmured. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "If she's cursed, then I'm the poor sap she hasn't stepped on yet. That makes me either the bravest man alive or the dumbest. Possibly both." Gasps rippled through the crowd. One of the younger guards snorted, half choked on laughter, and immediately tried to hide it. The official scowled, but Lariah's lips curved into the smallest, proudest smile. "Come," she said firmly, standing taller. "If he is to be judged, then he will stand beside me, not hidden away." And with that, she strode toward the council tower, the human perched on her shoulder waving like a parade mascot, leaving behind a city buzzing with whispers louder than ever before. The council chamber shimmered with light refracted through crystal walls, the air so heavy with silence that even the guards' armor creaked apologetically when they shifted their weight. Lariah stood in the center, towering so high her ears brushed the vaulted ceiling. On her shoulder, Eric swung his legs like a child perched on a swing, entirely unimpressed by the hostile stares aimed his way. One counselor cleared his throat with exaggerated authority. "The giant returns, and now she brings an offworlder, as if her curse alone were not enough." Eric raised a hand. "Quick correction. Not just any offworlder, this offworlder. There's a difference. One is doomed, the other is mildly unlucky and needs a towel." The counselors murmured, unimpressed. Lariah's voice, calm but resonant, cut through the chamber. "He is not cursed. He is human. His ship fell from the skies. He did not flee from me. That is all." "That is enough," snapped another counselor. "A creature who does not fear you must surely be mad. And madness is dangerous." "Hey," Eric said, leaning over Lariah's collarbone. "I'll have you know my madness is very well organized. Color-coded, even." A younger guard tried to stifle a laugh and failed, earning a sharp glare from his superior. Lariah noticed, her lips curving slightly. For once, the mockery was not entirely directed at her. The high priest stepped forward, robes swishing like offended curtains. He held up a crystal tablet etched with runes. "The prophecy speaks. The giant's shadow will awaken disaster. Her laughter will shake foundations. Her touch will unseal what must remain sealed." Eric leaned closer to read, squinting. "That's a prophecy. Looks like a badly written fortune cookie. Got anything about winning lottery numbers?" The priest recoiled. "Blasphemy." "Blas what now?" "Listen, buddy, where I'm from, blasphemy is wearing socks with sandals. This just sounds like Tuesday night poetry club." The chamber erupted in whispers. Some hissed that the human was arrogant. Others muttered that perhaps arrogance was braver than silence. Lariah stood still, her hands clasped to keep them from trembling. Never had anyone spoken to the council like this. The high priest slammed his staff down. "Remove him. Remove them both before." A sudden tremor shook the chamber. Crystals overhead vibrated with a low hum, as if responding to the sound of the priest's staff. Lariah's ears twitched sharply, catching a resonance no one else could hear. Eric grabbed her tunic to steady himself. Was that an earthquake, or just your local version of applause?" The humming grew louder. A web of light spread across the floor, etching geometric patterns in glowing lines. Counselors stumbled back, clutching at each other. Guards raised their weapons, though against what, none could say. "It is her curse," the priest cried. "She has awakened it." "No," Lariah said, voice firm though her heart raced. "It is not me. It is the city." Eric whistled softly. "Well, this is either really bad news, or the world's coolest light show. Do I clap, or do I run?" Before anyone could answer, the hum subsided. The patterns on the floor faded, leaving the chamber in silence once more. Counselors exchanged nervous looks. The high priest sputtered, pointing at Lariah. "You see, even her presence threatens our safety." Eric sighed dramatically. "Look, if the building hums when she stands here, maybe the building just likes her. Ever think of that? She's tall, she's stylish, she's got ears you could hang laundry on. Buildings have preferences too." Laria's laugh escaped before she could stop it. This time it didn't crack glass, but the resonance from her chest stirred faint echoes in the crystals again, a subtle vibration. The priest nearly fainted. "She must be exiled," he cried, "before the prophecy consumes us all." Eric folded his arms, shaking his head. "Exile her? Really? That's your solution? You've got someone who can literally make architecture hum, and you want to throw her into a swamp. Where I'm from, people pay money for surround sound systems." The younger counselors shifted uneasily, whispering. Fear battled with curiosity in their faces. One of them, barely older than a boy, finally spoke. Perhaps the prophecy was misread. Perhaps her voice is not disaster but awakening. The high priest's face twisted in outrage. "Silence, child." But the seed had been planted. Murmurs spread, doubt mixing with awe. Laria felt something stir inside her, fragile and terrifying. The possibility that she was not a curse at all. Eric gave her tunic a pat, his grin lopsided. "See, told you. You're not a monster. You're basically a walking, talking stereo system with bonus intimidation factor." The guards escorted them out of the chamber with stiff formality. Outside, the streets buzzed louder than ever, citizens pressing at windows, whispering faster than sparks leaping from a fire. Laria walked tall, though her heart thudded with unease. Beside her ear, Eric leaned against her neck as if he had been born there. "Well, congratulations," he said. "You just turned a council meeting into a rock concert. If this keeps up, we'll need to start charging admission." And though fear still stalked her steps, Laria's laughter joined his, rolling down the crystal streets like a sound the city had been waiting centuries to hear. The council's decree spread through Karath faster than fire through dry reeds. Laria and the human would be summoned again at dusk. Whispers chased them down every street, some laced with fear, others with something dangerously close to hope. Laria kept her strides measured, shoulders back, but every glance, every muttered word, pressed against her like a weight she couldn't shake. Eric, perched as usual on her shoulder, seemed immune. "So," he said, dangling his legs casually, "is this where they crown you queen, or where they throw us into a volcano? I need to know whether to practice my bow or my scream." "You joke too much," she muttered. "Correction, I joke exactly the right amount," he said. "Keeps me from noticing that half this city looks at me like I'm a walking plague, and the other half looks at you like you're the end credits to their apocalypse." She couldn't help it. Her laugh rumbled out, earning fresh stares from passers-by. The crystal walls around them quivered faintly, light rippling through their surfaces like water. Eric pointed at the shimmer. "See, even the architecture thinks I'm funny. I'm basically killing it up here." They reached the plaza before the council tower, just as the suns dipped, casting the city in twin shadows. A crowd had gathered, pressed tight, their eyes reflecting curiosity and fear. The counselors stood on a raised platform, robes glowing faintly from embedded circuitry. The high priest, predictably, looked ready to combust. "This is the end," he declared, voice echoing through the plaza. "The giant's curse grows stronger. Already her laughter shakes our sacred structures. If she remains, she will bring ruin. She must be cast out beyond the marshes." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Exile was worse than death. It was erasure. Eric cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted, "Hold on. Is she shaking your buildings just by laughing? Maybe reinforce your buildings? Where I'm from, it's called maintenance." The priest nearly choked. "Silence, off-worlder." But silence did not come. From the back of the crowd, a young woman called out, "If she leaves, who will wake the crystals? Who will bring the hum back to Karath?" Others joined in, uncertain but insistent. A man shouted, "Perhaps the prophecy was warning of danger if we ignored her, not if we welcomed her." The counselors shifted uneasily. The priest bellowed about doom and curses, but his words no longer rang absolute. Laria felt her chest tighten. Never had voices spoken for her. Never had anyone dared. She looked at Eric, whose grin was wide and lopsided. "Told you," he whispered. "You're not cursed, you're headlining." Before the council could respond, the ground shivered beneath their feet. Light burst from the plaza stones, patterns spiraling outward in radiant blue. The crowd cried out as the glow spread, rising along the crystal towers, filling the city with pulsing resonance. Laria's ears caught the frequency instantly, a deep harmony threading into her bones. "It responds to you," whispered a counselor, awe overtaking fear. Eric raised his arms theatrically. "Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for your local giant. One night only, unless you exile her, in which case, no refunds." The resonance intensified when Laria laughed at him, spreading like a ripple through water, vibrating the entire city until even the counselors staggered to keep their balance. Yet the towers did not fall. They glowed brighter, steadier, stronger than in generations. The people gasped, not in fear but wonder. The priest tried one last time, shouting over the hum, "It is a trick. She is dangerous." "Dangerous," Eric yelled back. "You're right. She's dangerous to despair. She's hazardous to loneliness. She's catastrophic to glassware. But you know what? I think you can live with that." Laria felt her heart surge. She placed her hand over the glowing plaza stones, and the hum leapt higher, blooming into chords that filled every corner of Kirath. Citizens clutched one another, some crying, some laughing, all staring in awe. The younger counselor, the one who had dared to speak before, stepped forward. "She is not the end of us. She is the beginning." The priest sputtered, his authority crumbling as the crowd began to cheer. First hesitant, then louder, voices rose in a tide of sound that nearly rivaled Laria's resonance. Eric waved both hands like he was conducting the noise. "That's it. Keep it going. Best encore I've ever seen." Laria closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't an omen. She wasn't a shadow. She was a song, and the city was singing back. Eric leaned against her neck, his voice soft but steady. "Guess exile's off the table. Good thing, too. I was worried about swamp mosquitoes the size of motorcycles." Her laughter rolled across the plaza again, and this time no one fled. They laughed with her, letting the resonance shake the city awake. The barrier between her and them had cracked wide open, and through it poured not fear, but possibility. The priest stormed from the platform, his cries drowned by the people's voices, while the council stood uncertain, caught between old fear and new wonder. Laria straightened, taller than ever, and for once her size felt less like a burden and more like a crown. Beside her ear, Eric murmured, "You know, if you're queen after this, I'm totally putting royal psychic on my resume." And she laughed, the city glowing brighter still. The suns rose the next morning on a city that no longer whispered her name with fear. Instead, Kirath buzzed with chatter, 1,000 conversations weaving her into them not as a curse, but as a marvel. Children mimicked her laughter. Guards retold the story of the glowing plaza. Merchants speculated on what her resonance might mean for trade. For once, Laria walked through the streets without the space around her emptying. People still gave her room, but it was room made with respect rather than terror. Eric, balanced lazily on her shoulder, waved like he was part of a parade float. "You hear that? You're trending. Probably #1 in alien social media right now. I should start charging for selfies." She arched a brow at him. "Selfies? Earth thing. You'll love it. Just involves holding a camera dangerously close to your face and pretending you don't look awkward." Despite herself, she chuckled. The sound shivered through the crystal buildings again, softer this time, as if the city were humming back to her in a private duet. For the first time in her life, the resonance didn't feel like an accident. It felt like belonging. The council reconvened at midday, though without the high priest, who had vanished into self-imposed exile, muttering about doom. The younger counselor spoke with hesitant authority. "The city has chosen," he said. "The crystals respond to you. We will no longer call you cursed. We will call you guardian." The word caught in her chest. Guardian. Not monster, not omen. Guardian. She bowed her head slightly. "I never wanted worship. Only not to be alone." Eric stretched his arms out. "See, that's the secret. Loneliness is way scarier than you are. Trust me. I've seen you step on bread. The bread didn't even look that scared." She shot him a look, ears twitching, but laughter tugged at her lips. The council offered her a new place, not outside the city but within it. A tower reinforced with crystal harmonics, designed to withstand her resonance and welcome it. Not a cage, but a home. She accepted, though with one condition, that the human be allowed to stay as well. The council hesitated, but the crowd's cheers outside the chamber left them no choice. Eric leaned toward her ear, whispering, "Guess I'm officially your roommate. Don't worry, I'm great at chores, except dishes, and laundry, and sweeping. But I make a mean instant noodle." She shook her head, smiling despite herself. In the days that followed, she learned to use her resonance deliberately. Her laughter could strengthen crystal supports. Her voice could ignite dormant circuitry embedded in the city's foundations. Even her hum could light the streets at night. She was no longer a danger to avoid. She was a force the city needed. People came to her not with fear, but with questions, hopes, even jokes. Children dared each other to climb her toes, laughing when she lifted them gently to higher windows. Eric, meanwhile, became a kind of accidental diplomat. He explained Earth's oddities, music, games, pizza, to curious citizens, often with dramatic embellishments. "Imagine a flat bread covered in melted stars," he told them of pizza, and when they gasped, he winked at Lariah. "See, I told you Earth cuisine would impress." Through it all, Lariah felt herself changing. The loneliness that had weighed on her for years was lifting, replaced not only by companionship, but by purpose. She was still enormous, still unlike anyone else, but she was no longer ashamed. Her size was not her curse, it was her gift. One evening, she and Eric sat on the ridge overlooking the marshes, where his ship still smoldered quietly, a reminder of how their story had begun. The sun's bled color into the horizon. "You could leave," she said softly. "Return to your world." Eric leaned back against her neck, hands folded behind his head. "Sure, I could. Or I could stay here, where the buildings sing and my best friend is 90 feet tall. Kind of hard to top that, don't you think?" Her throat tightened. "Best friend?" "Of course," he said. "Unless you'd prefer, giant cosmic partner in chaos." She laughed, the marsh rippling with the sound. The city lights flickered in answer, glowing brighter as if agreeing with her. For the first time, she did not feel like she was laughing alone. When the night deepened and the stars unfurled across the sky, Eric murmured, half asleep, "You're not too big. The universe was just too small." Her eyes softened, her ears twitching in quiet amusement. The words wrapped around her heart like a promise. And as the city of Kirath hummed gently beneath her, alive with light and laughter, Lariah knew her journey had ended not in exile, but in belonging. She was no longer the shadow of a prophecy. She was herself, guardian, friend, laughter woven into stone. And beside her was the one human foolish enough and brave enough to step forward when no one else would. The end.